Welcome to the Humin podcast. I'm your host, Min, and co-founder of Humin. Humin is building an app that can track your high or low mood symptoms automatically. Check us out at www.humin.uk and follow us on Instagram at humin.mh. Hi everybody, this is the 7th episode of our first series on eating disorders. In my last episode, I spoke to you about my recovery journey to be free from the constant mental hunger that I was experiencing, to find a really suitable, happy balance. And today, with Christmas approaching, I wanted to talk to you about how difficult festive seasons or being on holiday can be for people experiencing stress around eating and perhaps struggling with body images. I'm not going to go into too much detail about my thoughts around how recovery is about riding out waves. I'm going to talk to you guys about that actually in our next episode. But for this episode, I wanted to share that upfront, that I still have some symptoms still that comes and goes depending on the natural cycles and how I'm feeling, because you can't feel good every single time in all the moments. That's just reality of life, in my opinion anyway. So when it comes to my existing symptoms that sometimes flares up, things like checking my Apple Fitness 10 times a day perhaps, and worrying about my exercise frequency and intensity to an extent where it disrupts and distracts me from important work. I sometimes really struggle about feeling physically bigger after sort of a week or so of eating more than I usually would in my normal day-to-day life. And this is why I'm going to talk about festive seasons and Christmas and holiday, because these special occasions actually present a degree of uncertainty that can be very challenging for people going through eating disorders or people experiencing stress around food and controlling your diet, your exercise routine to maintain a certain body state. And this all goes back, in my opinion, to the fear of weight gain. It's of course dependent on each individual, but for me, a lot of these issues goes down to that inherent fear of weight gain that I struggle to get rid of completely. It just sort of comes and goes. Sometimes I can really fight this fear of weight gain. Sometimes I feel a little bit more vulnerable, and I sometimes experience these symptoms in slightly bigger magnitudes. So when it comes to Christmas and other festive seasons or other holidays away from your usual controlled settings, it can be very uncertain and it can be very challenging for people who are experiencing disordered eating symptoms. And I think one element of that comes from the fact that we feel, or we can often feel like we should be happy, but when we're not, that creates a bigger resentment towards these holidays or these symptoms or the feelings that we're going through, because it feels like it should be a happy season, and it feels like I should be grateful and really happy about all the food I have, the holiday, and the environment that I'm in. But the reality is, if you're suffering from eating disorder symptoms, it can be really miserable and it's difficult to control how you feel. And it's totally okay to feel like the way you do. But I think this notion around feeling like you should be happy actually makes it a bit worse for somebody with an eating disorder to go through these festive seasons. And the second point is around the pressure that actually mounts up during these festive seasons, or especially on holiday, actually, for this point. So I think there is a bit more pressure to look slimmer in reality. You know, it's an unspoken culture in a lot of the Instagram societies that I've seen, where there is a pressure to look slimmer and good and just you're in your best shape possible during these holidays, because you take more pictures, you put them on Instagram or other social media, and you usually wear clothes that you don't usually wear as well, things like bikini or dresses or other things. That also applies to guys as well. So there's that change of pressure to look better on holiday. But also, I think there is an element around if you're away on holiday with your friends or with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, that can actually add a little bit more pressure. And these are all subconscious, even if you know that it doesn't matter. Subconscious mind and subconscious beliefs are really powerful. So it can definitely influence you in the background for you to feel a little bit more stressed and to be watching your diet for your holiday and sort of really taking control of small actions day to day that sort of builds up over time. So yeah, there's certainly that element around who is around you during these holidays and festive seasons. And the fourth point is actually quite a unique case that applies to me, and I'm sure it applies to actually quite a lot of you potentially. But I am originally from South Korea, so I go back to South Korea sometimes to see my family because everybody's at home back in South Korea. And back in Korea, I really hope this is changing, but there is that judgmental culture on how slim people need to be. And I think generally speaking, the standard that I've encountered in South Korea is a lot more unrealistic than the UK, so even more unrealistic than what I see in the UK. So my holidays when I go home back to South Korea usually consists of me, or has always consisted of me, feeling ashamed of myself or feeling a bit guilty when I meet friends, or worried when I meet friends, feeling like I should have actually lost weight during the time that I was away. This is quite a big barrier for me to go home on holiday, because it's something that I have to do to see my family because I love them so much and I love my friends. But even now, still, I find it really challenging to go back. And you know what, after about 2 months of being in South Korea, I'm usually craving to come back, to be away from this brainwashing culture around needing to be thin, needing to be in a certain way that the culture in South Korea demands you to be. If any of you are listening who are from South Korea or from other cultures that have similar standards, then I hope that you can really relate to what I've said just then. And the fifth one is about just simply having more of the nicer food around on holiday or during these festive seasons. That can be quite a challenging thing for somebody who's trying to control, or somebody who's nervous around having food around them. So at the time of recording this podcast, it's about mid-end of November, and I know Christmas is coming up super soon. I'm very excited. And lots of you will be surrounded by good food like mince pies, the cakes, the drinks, the snacks, the pigs in blankets if you're in the UK. And we're certainly very, very fortunate to have access to food, because you must not forget that. But in reality, we are all subjective human beings. So even if you have access to all of these supposedly nice foods, I want to raise awareness that it can still be very tormenting to be around food for people with disordered eating or eating disorders, especially those sort of struggling with body image and working out calories and controlling your diet, vice versa. I would like you guys to think about being mentally prepared to ride out this Christmas season with more recovery tips, more awareness on how to be resilient and how to look after yourself during this period. And if you're already sort of worried a lot around your eating habits and you're here wanting to get some recovery tips and some more motivations, of course, I've already spoke about my recovery in my previous podcast episode, but also in my next episode, I'm going to be talking about maintenance of recovery and how to stay well, and how to, again, I keep referring to this phrase of riding out the mental health challenge waves that life naturally presents to you. So hopefully these episodes will be particularly helpful. But like I always recommend, this is another source of information, so I really recommend you look at some other channels. I have promoted my 3 best resources, so Tabitha Farah's blog and the Follow the Intuition YouTube channel, as well as the Feeding Freedom podcast. These 3 resources I think is definitely worth you guys checking out if you found this podcast helpful. And I will, of course, actually be going through this Christmas with a bit of challenge, because I also have some remaining symptoms that comes back and forth. And I know that every festive season has been a challenge for me. So I will take this year's Christmas as an opportunity to really test myself with my resilience this year. And I'm actually really excited to take on this challenge with you all. And I'm excited to feel like I've made progress since last year and feel more present. So again, I'm telling you guys that recovery was totally worth it, and it was totally worth that emotional roller coaster, because it equipped me with so much more freedom, so much more opportunities in my career, my social life, everything that I have in my life. So I'm here to encourage you to always strive for recovery, to never give up, to be resilient, and to share the love with others. So if you think anybody else could benefit from this podcast, please share with your loved ones and the people that you care about so that they can hear about this podcast as well. Thank you for being here with me today in our brief episode about festive and the holiday seasons. I hope you felt like it wasn't just you experiencing these discomforts, particularly around festive and holiday periods. And let's raise awareness, let's talk about it, let's accept it, and let's talk about how we can be resilient to these stresses so that we can live better and we can live happier. So until our next episode around recovery and maintenance, I hope you guys keep well, and I'll see you guys in our next episode.